Welcome once again to Dialogue on Public Issues. This is John Channing with Campbellsville University. Today I'm interviewing one of our local elected officials, Chad Shively, the Taylor County Property Valuation Administrator. As a kid growing up in Kentucky, we called him the Tax Commissioner. He may not want to be called that, but now called the PVA. Welcome, Chad.
Thanks for having me.
Did you raise my taxes as you came
As
here
I
today?
walked 2/10 of a mile,
Okay.
I did.
2/10 of a mile from
2/10
the
of a mile.
courthouse to
I
the.
did. I had it on my watch.
Everyone, that's an important fact to know.
It is. It is.
Now, tell us about the role of a property valuation administrator.
Well, there's a lot of different responsibilities encompassed in that, but the main thing is to equitably assess property found in that PVA's county or jurisdiction. Now, there are some other duties that kind of expand off of that. When properties are transferred through the county clerk's office through deed, title, we get a copy of those so we can transfer into the new owner. We maintain a working GIS parcel map for different entities to use throughout our county and throughout the state, and to go out and physically locate and assess, measure, gather characteristics of new property, put them on the roll. Now, there's a lot, like I said, of offshoots from that
Sure.
that expand responsibility. But
How often do you reevaluate a residential property?
well, by statute, we are mandated to physically inspect once every 4 years, at least once every 4 years.
Okay. If a property owner makes a major addition to his or her home, are they supposed to let you know?
They are. There is still some of those, I guess you could say, rules on the books from way back whenever you said tax commissioner.
Right.
That is actually still in the phone book today. If you
is
try
it?
to find me,
Okay.
you have to look under tax commissioner.
tax
Yeah.
commissioner. Wow.
So, but getting back to your question, yeah, we have that, but then there's also times that we go out throughout the year and try to find those properties ourselves too.
Okay. Well, if someone thinks their property is evaluated too high or assessed too high, what is the process?
Well, first of all, that has
person-
never happened.
Never happened. I know, not in Taylor County, but it does happen
Right.
in other
No,
counties.
I'm just kidding with you.
And we read
I'm just
about
kidding with
it.
you.
So what are the rights that a property owner has?
Well, a taxpayer does have rights, and they can come in throughout the year. They can come in anytime. There is a certain window, just depending on where we are gathering the data, sending all the information to Frankfurt for final approval. But there is generally about a 13-day window. If someone gets reassessed and their assessment increases, then they will be notified. They have to be notified by mail. If they agree with the assessment that they get, there's no issue. But then there is also instructions in that letter to contact us if there is something. There could be underlying issues that we don't know about.
Sure. Now, in many states, your counterparts would be appointed, I believe, rather than elected. What would be your argument or that of your association, your peers, as to why it's better to elect this particular position? And there's a lot of debate about that.
There is, and it comes up every so often. I would tend to say to maintain continuity while giving individual taxpayers a voice in the process. The property tax calendar, as it stands now, we just mentioned, it does allow for that individual to come in to discuss their assessment. If there were some changes to the tax calendar and even to that office, this office, whether it be the office as a whole or the actual office of PVA, I believe it could have a domino effect as to how that office is managed, whether it be locally or some instances there is a central assessing unit in whatever that state's revenue department would be. And you could see how difficult that would be if someone had an issue with their assessment, if they had to go to Frankfurt to discuss that.
Right. Now, you're sort of a tax PVA is an interesting, odd kind of office in that it's elected by the local official. You're elected at the county level, but you're actually a part of a state organization,
Yes.
are you not?
Mhm.
Are you a state employee per
It-
se?
I am, and my office staff, we're all state employees, but we are connected to the county, the individual counties, like you said, because we are an elected official from that county. We also receive some funds from appropriations mandated through Frankfurt to the fiscal court,
Okay,
and the fiscal court will give us some appropriations to
Okay.
run our office.
okay. But you are to some extent regulated by Frankfurt,
Absolutely,
by the
absolutely.
State Department of Revenue.
And we are so in such a way that because the state has a hand in receiving parts of this revenue that people get on their tax bill at the end of the year from the sheriff, they'll look on that and they'll see state. Well, that's part of the reason they want to make sure that everything is correct.
How many taxing districts are you accountable to in the context, you don't collect taxes for them, I understand
Right.
that, but your assessments or evaluations are used by them for purposes of collecting taxes?
On the spot, I'm going to guess 7.
Okay.
I think about this all the time
Yeah.
too, and I say guess because it really depends on where you live
Okay.
in the community. You might be in the city school district, but in the county, you could be in the city of Campbellsville, but not be in the city school district.
Right.
And so it depends on how many or where a person lives to how many
But
different
the
entities.
taxing districts that would use your evaluation would
6 or
include,
7.
Yeah,
Yeah,
would include
hospital,
city, county schools, city and county government, state government,
health department,
soil conservation,
extension office.
Extension office.
Yeah, we do
Okay.
not have our fiscal court actually funds the soil conservation board, so we
Okay.
don't have to have that as a
Okay.
tax.
So several organizations.
Several.
What are the guiding policies or principles that you have to follow when you go out and look at a piece of property to establish the value?
Well, state mandates that we, that we have properties on for 100% fair market value on the tax roll, and that is as close to as we can get. Obviously, we're going to miss the mark. Generally, we are under that mark, but the main reason being we can't be everywhere in 1 year. We have the property in the county. We have it split into 4 sections, and it's called a quadrennial review. So every section of the county will get reassessed, reevaluated, physically inspected once every 4 years. House Bill 44, you may be familiar with, back in the I think it may have been 1990. I've always said early 90s, but I think it was the earliest of the 90s that you can get to. CARA, Kentucky Education Reform Act, a lot of that changed the office of PVA, and by the means of what their duties consisted of. You said tax commissioner. It was around that time that the actual term changed, and the main premise behind that is where the funding for schools comes from. And all of that Kentucky Education Reform Act, that encompassed a lot of information. And part of that information was how property is reassessed for schools to be able to tax for their funding.
That was the result of the
Yes.
Supreme Court throwing out the system of funding schools because of the inequities in property values between Anchorage and McCreary County, for example.
Right.
And the fact that poorer counties weren't getting equal funding under the system that was being used at that time. Now, the difference in property assessment and property tax rate, if that makes sense for our viewers and for old geezers like myself who mix up these terms.
Well, do you like pie?
Do I like pie?
Yeah.
Yes, I like pie.
Okay, so let's think of it.
Coconut pie, particularly.
Coconut pie,
Yeah,
okay.
that's my favorite.
So let's think of this as a pie.
Okay.
Both of those terms are a part of the overall Kentucky property tax system. But if you think about a pie chart and how the different pieces go in to make the whole, those are just 2 pieces of the Kentucky property tax system to make the entire whole. That's actually the best way that I've been able to figure out to describe it. The actual rate is the product of the taxing entity. We mentioned hospital, school, city, et cetera. Those entities, they are usually governed by a board, and they have a budget that they need to adhere to. So whenever they look at what they are going to need for the coming year in their budget, they will then revert back to the assessment that they will have from our office. Then they will be able to do some math, figure out what they need, and the product is a rate by which they tax the property to get that.
And they can, under House Bill 44, they can come up to 4%.
4% without voter recall.
A voter recall.
Right. Yep.
Okay.
They're allowed to do that.
That's why that calculations are so critical. And I'm sure there's a lot of 3.999% rates or net revenues.
Right underneath the umbrella.
Now, you recently issued a report from your office. What were some of the major points of that study? And then secondly, how could people, I presume that study is probably online on your website.
Sure is. You know, aside from the numbers that we see, I would have to say the actual reliance on internet and that information being online to the people that are going about and doing business in our community. Yes, that report will show some trends, show overall assessments in different categories. But you know, I was just thinking just this past year of, we used to have dozens of realtors, appraisers, insurance agents, loan officers that would come in on a daily basis into our office, foot traffic. And the website has drastically cut down the amount of foot traffic. Now, we have some from out of town, you know, that will still show up and pop in, and we still keep the same information in our office as we did just prior to the website. And the website's been going active since 2010. We were actually one of the first counties in if you want to look at it like a 20 county radius, to have online records. And that's just been a huge help for our office to be able to maintain and continue to do more work while also giving everyone what they expect that is using the information. You know, we don't think about, you know, the loan officers that are at the bank right now working up loans, and they don't have to come in. They can just log on and get what information they need. Insurance agents, et cetera, appraisers, realtors.
Can an individual property owner pull up their own property information?
They can. However, what they would like to look at may be limited because it's designed for convenience, and those individuals pay a subscription to be able to see everything. But now they're free to come into the office and look at anything.
Sure. Now, what is the total real estate assessment in Taylor County approximately, and then per sector, like farm and commercial and residential, different categories?
A few years ago, I'm gonna say around 2014, we surpassed $1 billion assessment. Now, when you say that, you're thinking, man, that's incredible. You talk to other counties like Fayette, they have 4 times that. Sure. But, you know, for our area, that's quite an accomplishment. The majority of that assessment, we're right at 1.1 billion. About 650 million of that is residential property. What that means is non-commercial use, 10 acres or less. It may or may not have a house on it. It may just be 9 acres. But that's residential land. The state defines residential property as less than 10 acres. Anything over 10 is constituted as a farm. So around 650 million, 300 million is commercial, industrial type properties, and the rest is going to be farmland.
which sectors are growing the most and which are declining the most?
Well, actually,
Or are they all kind
all
of staying
three,
constant?
all three are growing,
Mm-hmm.
and that's really how the tax roll grows itself. Yes, there is some reassessment work that has to be done from time to time, just to keep that equity. But the majority of the tax roll will grow through transfers of property. Let's say a property is assessed at 50,000, it sells for 75. Well, that's an increase of 25,000 to the tax roll from one year to the next. We have several new homes being built. I think last year we had 16 million in residential new property. So overall, there's a steady increase.
We're not seeing here a diversion of prime ag land to commercial or residential purposes as some other counties, particularly in the bluegrass area, for
Well,
example, to the extent.
Right. You know, small subdivisions, no. I mean, you'll see those small subdivisions
Right.
pop up, but you know, large 100, 200 acre tracts are that's not gonna happen.
Is the small farm disappearing?
It is, and I
Okay,
think that's just a national trend.
More larger farming
I
operations.
think we need to. I think we need to talk a little bit about Wendell Berry and some of his books, because that's that's a lot of.
It's a national trend.
It is.
Obviously, the small farms disappearing.
It is.
It has been actually. You can go back 50, 60 years and see the trend really post World War II forward.
Well, you think about just I grew up on a farm, but now I'm married, 2 kids.
Right.
We don't live on a farm.
Right.
So
I grew up on a farm, own a farm, and have it on the market to sell. It's been an operating farm for over 200 years and been in the family since 1840s.
Wow.
But there's no way to pass it, no realistic way to pass it on to the next generation.
Right.
And that's happening more and more
It is.
as well.
It is.
In terms of growth of the tax base in Taylor County, how does that compare to area counties around us? And I don't want to get into a point-by-point comparison to all of our neighbors necessarily.
Right.
But how do we compare to our neighbors, and then how do we compare to kind of the state as a whole?
Well, we have to go to mandatory conferences every year, and a lot of it is exactly what you and I are doing right now, where we will end up at a break, and we will end up just speaking one-on-one with other PBAs, and that's part of the discussion. We're seeing statewide is an increase in sales, not just the volume of properties that are selling, but if you're having a good, decent economy, that's one of the things that's going to fuel that is property selling. So we're seeing that even in your eastern Kentucky counties, they're starting to see a little bit more of that. So it's kind of a wave a little bit. Now, we're starting to see some things that we had not normally seen before. We would see properties would sell, and sell for high amounts. It just may take a little longer. Well, now we're seeing people snatch properties up just like that. And that's usually in your Louisville and Lexington areas. People have had properties on the market for 15 minutes and they're sold. And that has happened just in a matter of days in Taylor County as well.
One thing you and I have talked about in a couple of past interviews, coming off looking back at the Great Recession, as it was called, 09, 010, that period of time, really a little earlier than that, when things really slowed down, it was like it took a while for that to hit Taylor County.
Right.
It didn't hit here until a year to 2 years afterwards. And then it took us a year or 2 or 3 to get back started up again. So is that pretty well normal, do you think, for at this level?
Well, now that you mention it that way, we're seeing things in a way that we have not seen before. So the amount of sales are ticking up. The sale prices are ticking up. We're having to to play basically catch up to make sure that things are equitable. I mean, obviously, you can't have this individual with this home that's worth $100,000 and their neighbors all around them are selling for $200,000. It can't stay that way. But at the same, on the flip side of that, I guess you could say, it can't stay the other way either for a long carried out.
Of course,
time.
the national economy seems to still be going strong.
Right.
6 months ago, a year ago, there were concerns about recession.
Right.
With the trade policies and other indicators and bond yields and so on, but that and interest rates were creeping up. Now they're coming down, and and some of the trade issues have sort of, I wouldn't say they're settled by any means, they're not, but they're not as tense, maybe, a perception anyway.
And I think, a lot of it is that we're not that far removed from that recession. So, people were a little skittish whenever they see these elevations and they think, wow, if you only have one way to go once you get so far.
So nationally, we're in an historically extended growth period. And that's not to say that all sectors are operating on full cylinder. They're not. But overall, things are going pretty well, I think, economically across the country, and certainly here in Campbellsville, we're doing okay.
Yeah.
Put it that way.
Speaking to I'll speak to local realtors from time to time, appraisers. They're staying busy. The banks their money is moving. You talk to real estate agents, and they can't keep a property listed long enough for other people to come look at it.
There seems to be, particularly in the residential market, both homeowner and rental properties, a good demand. So, what is the approximate amount of property taxes that are paid in Taylor County to all entities, to all taxing entities, and then approximations on how those are distributed?
Now, I wouldn't have access to what the Campbellsville Independent School, because they have their own collector, or the city of Campbellsville, they have their own collector. But roughly to the sheriff, $10 million.
Okay.
Now that is going to be what happens is whenever when the bills are printed, there are some other people that get involved. Mark Carney, the county clerk, and the sheriff have what's called a sheriff's official receipt. And on that official receipt, it'll say, hey, the health department should be collecting this much money, this much money, this much money, et cetera, for the hospital and on through down to the schools, all of those entities. Now, what will happen is the sheriff will collect those taxes for a fee, and that's what helps run their office. Then they will disperse those. I believe it's monthly that they will disperse those to collections to the different entities.
So those entities, that's a large amount of money then, obviously, to our county government, and that's not counting that would go. They would then disperse to the state.
They would also disperse
to state
yes, because they collect for the state as well.
So the state's going to get all of that's not going to fiscal court.
No.
I was going to call Judge Smith and tell him, my street needs.
Right. There, the county will get a check, just like the state will get a check, and the health department, the extension office, and so on.
Now, what entities would be the owners of some of the largest properties in Taylor County, as far as, if I may ask that question?
Well,
it's a matter of public record.
Right. So. If you go down South Columbia Avenue, there's a ginormous building, as my boys would say, on the left.
Okay.
And that's where Amazon is housed.
Okay.
That building and that total property are $25 million. Okay. They are the largest assessment in our county. Give you an idea of how big that building is. It's nearly 800,000 square feet. If you take an average residential home, 1,500 square feet, I thought this was interesting. You would be able to put nearly 500 of those residences inside, and that's not counting. Stacked on top of one another. That's just floor space. Walmart, I believe, is around 8 million. Green River Plaza, just recently sold about 2 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and it sold for $13 million.
Okay.
So those are some of the larger ones, and then you have like Lowe's and different places like that are going to be around the 4 and 6 million.
Now, how do our assessments, our total property values, assessments and taxes paid compared to other counties, Marion, Adair, Greene counties, Casey County, in general?
Well, now usually what you will see is apples to apples comparison. Greene County, for example, they would not have nearly the assessed value in a county as Taylor would have. So you would generally see their rates more in order to compensate if they're needing about the same amount of money for their services. As far as, say, somebody like Marion County, they are probably the closest to us. Their overall assessment is not nearly as much as ours. We have more, believe it or not, we have more industry.
We do.
Than Marion County.
Contrary to the
urban popular belief.
that runs around locally.
We actually have more industry, which is going to equal, we have more residential property because we have more people living here. Something that a lot of people may not realize, their taxes would be more out in the county in some of these different areas in Marion County. For example, we have one incorporated city.
Right.
They have 4 incorporated cities. So you can live out in the county with just basic taxing entities such as the state and extension office. And let's say you live in Bradfordsville. Bradfordsville will tax that individual as well. And that rate is going to really push further than Taylor County's. Adair County has soil conservation and an ambulance tax. Taylor County doesn't have that. So, you know, that's also a testament to our fiscal court, our people in city government, that they are budgeting in order to keep those taxing entities, I guess, from being able to be put for more taxation on
any. We're just about out of time. Anything we've missed that you would like to impart to the audience?
Well, I guess you could say that we hit on it just a little bit ago, but the Department of Revenue does send individuals down to our office periodically just to maintain that we have a good set of information for the public to look at, and we're doing a good job so far.
Yes, sir. Take care. Chad
Appreciate
Shively,
it.
Taylor County
As always.
Property Valuation Administrator.
Yes.
Or in the phone book, Tax Commissioner.
That's right.
Thanks a lot. God bless
Thanks,
you.
sir.
And thank our audience for being with us for a dialogue on public issues.